Welcome to Studio 12. Today we are joined by Irena Koblar, a world-renowned Slovene pianist who's been praised by the audiences and critics alike for her sensually moving interpretations. She's currently studying and teaching in New York City. Irena, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for the invitation.
Did you know you would become a pianist at an early age? And why the piano among all the instruments?
I think the decision of becoming a pianist, it was not really a decision to make. It was more that I'm the third generation. My father is a violinist. My grandfather was a percussionist. And I always had the piano at home. So when I was a baby, that was my mom's piano when she used to play. I have pictures when I was 7, 8, 9 months old and I'm already trying to make music. And so at the very beginning, it was more a part of overall education, as most of us do, go to school and learn something about music, learn an instrument. So we had the piano at home, and I sort of preferred piano over violin, so I picked the piano, or my parents picked it for me. So I would say up until I was 12 or maybe 13, it was more for fun, more for education, and then I started becoming more serious about it because I also got a very, very good teacher at that time, and she saw more potential, so she started working with me more, and we went to the first competition and that went well. So kind of you have new challenges, new goals, and once you reach them you realize that maybe you can go even higher and further. So and then I was 14 and I went to gymnasium, which is something that we have here. A lot of other countries don't. So that's just the other subjects that you have from the age of 14 to 18. And I went to gymnasium. I went to a music high school. And so at that time, I think between 14 and 18, you really are shaping yourself as a person and you really are thinking more seriously what you want to do with your life. And especially in music, at that age, it's really not just for fun anymore, because you reach a level where you either have to put a lot of effort into it to reach a certain level, or you just simply do that as for fun. So I think that's when I pretty much made a decision for myself that I want to do that professionally. Also because even now when I think about what else would I want to do, I know there are many things that I can do, but what I want to do, that's a different thing. So I think I made a right choice for me because that's really something that fulfills me, that satisfies me. And I think any profession that anyone chooses has to be something that really, at the end of the day, it's not just about the money that you make or if you are famous and any of these things, but it's really something that you see a meaning in that for what you do in your life.
And what were the challenges and possibly the sacrifices that you had to make that you can play as well as you do?
Sacrifices, challenges, it's an ongoing thing. It's not just what you did before, what you do today, what you will do. It's a lifestyle, unfortunately, because I sometimes really do wish that I had a job that would be just a job, and you go to work and you finish at 4, 5, or 6, and then you come home and that's it. But it's not. Because, for example, this particular summer, I have many things coming up this fall and this winter, so I couldn't take any breaks. And not this particular summer, but this is the 3rd summer in a row. So you cannot take vacation because playing piano, especially piano, it's like sports. If you are an athlete and you run every day and you don't run for 7 days and then you go and run again, you're not going to be as fast as you were 7 days before. So it's the same thing with the piano because it's a very physical instrument. You need a lot of strength. You have to build up muscles. You have to work on that. So a lot of that also has to do with physical exercise. So that's why you cannot just, take 3 weeks off and travel around the world. So that would be one of the sacrifices that is, it's not difficult to make, but you just have to make things clear in your head that that's just the way it is. And challenges, challenges are mostly on a personal level, on artistic level, because it's something that you have to work on constantly. You have to develop, you have to change, you have to observe yourself. You have to, at the same time, teach, and you have to have someone that teaches you. And I think a very important thing for any artist is to never stop learning, to never stop developing. There are many people that come to the point where they think, oh, I'm so good now and there's no need for me to go study with anybody else, but that is death. I think death for any field in art is when you think that you're actually good enough, because you're never good enough. There's always something more than you can do. I hope that when I'm 60 or 70, there's still something that I can learn from someone. And I'm sure that that's the way it is. So to keep yourself going, to keep yourself active, and you really have to do something on a daily basis, because we get lazy. I think it's in human nature that, oh, I'll do that tomorrow, I'll do that next week. But you can't. You have to study, you have to go to concerts, you have to listen to the people, you have to play for someone. And for me personally, it's even a little more challenging now, because I finished the official part of the studying about a year and a half ago. And so now what I do is every few months, every 3 or 4 months, I work with someone, with one of my previous mentors, or with my father, who's a musician, and you have to get a feedback. So, and the challenge is, anything is a challenge in life, you know, that you have to keep the balance, that you have to be not necessarily happy all the time, but at least balanced and fulfilled, that you really do something that makes sense in music.
What is it like to be a pianist in the world today, where there's so much competition, especially in New York City, where you study and teach? How do you manage?
New York City is a great city to live in. I really recommend that to every single person, to just spend maybe a few months or a year or a few years there in any profession, because it's horribly competitive. In anything. If you want to get on the subway, it's a competition to get on the subway. So you really learn how to fight for yourself. But it's not the skill of fighting that is so important. I think what is more important is through the fighting, you realize how important is that for you. Because if you come to a certain point and you see that I don't want to fight anymore, I don't want to do this anymore, then you also do realize that whatever your profession is, it may not be as important as you thought it is. So I think that was one thing that was very important for me, to realize that obviously I really do want to do this. Another thing is that you get to compare yourself a lot with others, which of course is not possible in a smaller environment, because of course New York City, you have 10 million people in one place and God knows how many thousands of pianists. And it's especially difficult right now because we are becoming very global. So it's not just anymore, when you look 50 years back, you had Europe and that was pretty much it. You had pianists from Russia, you had a few from Germany, a few from Poland, and a few others, maybe a couple of Americans, but it was predominantly European. Now, unofficial information is that there are 10 million people studying piano in China alone. So let's say of the 10 million people, did only 10,000 of them actually make it to the very highest level? That's a competition. And so among this competition, you have to know so precisely who you are and what your style is, because it's recognizable. You have to believe in yourself. You have to know how to shape certain things and how to express yourself, because that is the only thing that can make the difference between you and the 10,000 Chinese people. And that maybe my name is a little different and easier to pronounce. But so that was one thing that when we go back to the challenges, which you asked me before, is also a difficult thing, because I think any of us, when you think about what makes you who you are, it's a very complex thing. And it's a very complex thing to even express that through your profession. When you come to music, you cannot say, okay, I will play Mozart and then expresses who I am. It's not going to happen, because Mozart is this particular style and he can only express one fragment of you as a person. So you have to find a broad range of composers, range of works, what you can do, and what is the best way of you to show the world what kind of artist you are. Once again, what is that? It's research, it's analyzing yourself, it's working on different things. You have to try this, it may not work. You try another thing. You learn, you change. So it's A lot of work when it comes to different styles in music. It's good because it influences. I think it's also a wonderful thing that in New York it's not just about classical music, and it's not just about instrumental classical. You have the opera, you have the dance, you have theater, you have Broadway shows, and every single one of these things, if you are open-minded, which I think you have to be as an artist, you can get something. And I think what makes anybody interesting as a person is if you take little fragments from everywhere. You take a fragment from a Broadway show. Somebody may think that, what can you as a pianist learn from a Broadway show? But, for example, if it's articulate, if it's clear, if the message is being delivered, you can learn from these things as well. Theater as well. Jazz. I think jazz is incredible. Jazz, for example, when you get deeper into the music, you can recognize fragments of jazz going back 250 years in certain rhythm patterns and in melodies, etc. So if you're able to play Bach and give it a little bit of jazzy kick, not that you really make it sound as a jazz, but just the rhythmical structure has to be clear, which also jazz has it in a similar way. You can also gain much more of that as an artist. So that's another thing that is good. But overall, I think it's a great city to live in. It's a difficult city to live in. And it took me a couple of years to fully understand Frank Sinatra's song. As I said, I think I already mentioned that before, that if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere, because it truly is a city that will chew you and it will spit you out if you're not strong enough, or it will chew you and then you'll still make it somehow. And it's a very good exercise.
What do you think about the convergence and mixing of different styles of music that is happening today? For instance, when classical pieces are being used in pop culture and pop music.
I think that it depends on how it's done. There are many things that are done without any sense of style. And then it's junk. But then again, I had opportunity to hear, when I lived in Austria, there was a group of students that studied electronic music, and they took many different pieces from Mozart and made it into house. And I really have to say that was one of the, simply to say, coolest things I've heard in a long time, because you heard Mozart in a completely new way, and it was good. I heard Bach done in a jazz way. There is a wonderful French pianist, I think his name is Jacques Roussier, who did many pieces from Bach in a jazzy way, and it sounds wonderful. So if you do a crossover in that way, if it's with style, but that again requires somebody who's either a classical pianist or a jazz pianist or a pop musician. But then again, when you look at pop music today, also there's good pop music, there's bad pop music. So I think any field in music, if there is quality, if there is talent, if there is style, first of all, that particular field can be very good. And if you mix them together, then again, it takes several experts to really make a fusion that makes sense. So I think, why not? I don't think that we should be stuck in something that was, this is how it was 250 years ago, and you cannot change a thing about it. Why not? In the end of the day, the composer wrote that. He gave that to the world, and I think that we, if we respect what he wrote still, we should have the liberty to maybe create something new from that, because otherwise it's just something that is on the paper. You can create it as a musician, as a pianist, and just, maybe give it a new idea or combine that with someone else. I think it's also a good thing because you have many people today that, even though they are educated and they have traveled the world, they haven't really been to concert halls. Many are intimidated. I've heard, people that are maybe 30 or 40 or 50, they've only been to a few concerts in their life, and if you invite them, oh, let's go, Philharmonics are playing, I don't know, I'd rather go see a movie. Also something that can help educate or attract people is fusion, is crossover. So if you can maybe make Mozart in a house way, and I don't know, a teenager hears it in a club and likes the melody, and he knows that that's from the Magic Flute, maybe next time that there's Magic Flute in the opera, he is going to go and actually see the real thing. So, it's part of education too, so maybe it's not a bad thing.
As far as I know, you're also a musical ambassador in India. Can you tell us a bit more about this project?
I'm a music advisor for one performing arts center. We started working together about 6 months ago. I met a few people in New York, and they built a performing arts center in the Kerala region in Cochin, and they are going to build another 3 in India in the next 2 years. And we just met and talked about a few things, because I had the opportunity to meet a lot of musicians in New York that are from different fields of art, and they just asked me for my opinion who they could probably bring over, because they want to create a program that is it's various and very international and very different. And then we also started working on another project, which is a piano school, because they wanted to give the public, the audience, the people in India, opportunity to learn piano. I mean, children, of course, now at the beginning. And because for some reason, you do have access to pretty much all other instruments, all other classical instruments as well, but not piano. Maybe because of the climate, that they never really pursued that, or I don't know, the British left and they took the pianos with them. I really don't know. But it's actually strange that they're not really very present, except for in the big cities. But in the smaller cities, again, to say smaller cities in India, it's a completely different thing than to say smaller city in Europe. So we started working on a project of a piano school, and I was the one that created the whole structure of the program. And I just visited India a few weeks ago on that matter to see how things could work and what has to be adjusted, because, of course, it would be something that is a combination between programs that we have in Europe and that exist in the United States, but then again, it still has to be adjusted to the taste and the style of education in India, so that it's approachable and it's easy to accept for that culture. It was a very interesting experience, a very different culture that I've never been to India before, and has certainly nothing to do with anything I experienced before. Very interesting. Also interesting for yourself to maybe realize some things that are valued there are not necessarily still valued here as much. When it comes to family matters, moral values, social responsibilities, something that maybe we had many years ago, and it's still present in Europe. It's very much getting lost in the United States. So it was very nice to see that. I almost was envious of that, because you think that the West is chasing which ideals? You know, we're chasing the material, the financial, you want to have more, but you have more as in, I will buy a better car, and I will have a bigger house, and I will have a fancier vacation. But we see the most important cell of society, which is family, falling apart. And they still have that in the East. They keep the family together. They're very close. They're very traditional. They also have a nice feeling of social responsibility that I experienced, that I haven't seen here for a very long time, that it's not just, this is my life and my family and my child, but also your child is my child. And I will make sure that your child gets home safely as well. So, for example, details like that. It was very nice to see that. It was very nice to see children respect parents. I haven't seen that for a while either, in a true way, that you have deep respect for your parent, not fear. Many children today have fear from their parents, but not fear, but respect. That you know that you shouldn't do certain things because that's just not a way to go. So, makes you think what you want.
Does music equal happiness for you?
Does music equal happiness? I don't think I would be happy without music. So we can go backwards in that math. But music alone does not make you happy. Music alone cannot make you happy. It doesn't make me happy just that I sit at the piano and make music. First of all, it's a lot of hard work. You have to know where you want to get and how to get there. So it's a lot of planning. It's a lot of, you have to be very smart. You have to do things in advance. You have to know yourself. It makes me happy because I know that I'm doing something that is really me. So that is why that would make me happy. If I were a different person, probably something else would make me happy. But I think music is something that I thought about this a very long time ago when I was 21, 22. I had a period of a couple of weeks that I was watching the news and I was reading the papers, and almost everything that I read was bad. Well, not that that changed, but no, the catastrophe here, disaster there, 15 people killed, a bomb exploded, etc. and so on. So I was reading all these things, and then I go back to my room and I play Mozart. And I was just thinking, I'm playing Mozart and who cares? Really, there's people dying right now, there's people suffering right now, and I'm playing Mozart. So what difference does it make? Does it make a difference? So thinking about that, I actually realized that I personally believe in God. And for me, God has been, until then, the only thing that does not need a reason for existence, a reason for believing, a reason for making sense. And I realized at that moment that for me, in my life, only other thing besides God would be music. Because when you look at music or arts, it doesn't need any extra reason for it to exist. The existence of music alone already makes sense. And so that was kind of a revelation after 3 weeks of why is the world the way it is? I realized that maybe at the end of the day, I am doing something that really truly does make sense for myself. And if it's possible for me to make someone else happy through that, and then it's even more rewarding. When you play a concert, it happens so many times that, of course, people come after the concert and they say, congratulations, that was wonderful. But I remember the concerts when somebody would come after and say thank you. For whatever reason it was. If they were happy that day and that even made them even more uplifting, they said thank you. Or somebody that felt bad, depressed, or there was something that they were going through in their life at that moment, and something in my music, and something in my playing touched a part of their being, and it made them either feel better or it made them release those feelings. And I think that's another thing that music can offer you. It can maybe help you connect with that sphere that maybe other professions, other fields cannot really connect to, which is, I really do believe, a higher sphere of emotional and spiritual, and it opens you up. I read a while ago that in some religions, they actually believe that before we are born, the souls are waiting in a certain place to be born into our bodies, and that the only thing that we take with us as a memory, not that we really remember it, but it's kind of there as a feeling, is music. Because there, where the souls are waiting to be born, there's music. So I thought that was beautiful, because it really does feel like that sometimes. When you hear something, it kind of brings you somewhere else. You cannot really describe where, but it's familiar.
You also teach, and what are the main principles then that you try to convey to your students?
Well, first of all, at the very beginning, or when you're teaching somebody who's older, most important thing at the beginning is the technical things. Of course, you have to work with that, because you have to have a tool. And the tool to expression and good playing of piano is, of course, that you have a good technique. So you have to work on these things. But I think the more important is the message, because nowadays, I think the meaning of education is being lost as well. And I think education in culture is very, very important, because in anything that you do, if it's music, if it's arts, if it's painting, whatever, it gives you balance. Because you cannot, many people nowadays are only concentrated in one direction in their life. They only do this. And of course you can do that for a rather long time, but everybody, I think, they do get to a point in their life when it's not enough, it's not fulfilling, and when they feel unhappy. So I think you have to, through your life, consciously be doing something so that you can preserve and keep the balance, and not only keep it, but first of all, you have to create the balance in your life between whatever your profession is, your personal life, your spiritual life, emotional life. And I think that music is a very, very, very good tool for that. Also for many kids today, when you think about all the struggles they have to go through, it's most certainly much more difficult than it was 30 or 50 years ago, from what I hear from my parents and their friends. And I think it's important that you have something that is yours. that a child and an adult has something that is only yours. You can share it, of course, but if you need it, that's your sanctuary. That can be your place. It can be your activity. It can be something that if everything else is going wrong, you can go there and it will give you something back. So I think not only for the educational part that you want everybody, the youth today, the adults today, to be open-minded and they can look at things in a broader perspective, but I think it's important for the younger people today. It will make them better adults, I think, if they are involved in arts and music. It will not make them shallow and not too materialistic. And in any case, the world is too materialistic the way it is. So maybe the whole economic crisis is not such a bad thing after all. It will make us spend some time together.
As you mentioned, materialistic world, art and art business, it's something that really goes together nowadays. What's more important in your opinion?
One doesn't go without the other, unfortunately. That's just the way it is. You have to learn the rules of the game, as simple as that, because there are certain things that can be done, that cannot be done. You have to know how to do them. You have to know how to network. You have to know how to get to know people. You have to know how to present yourself. You have to know what is wanted right now from artists. There are so many of us that you cannot, if you offer something that has been heard for thousands of times before, you are not going to be interesting. Simple as that. So as I said before, you first have to know who you are so that you can do something that is persuasive. If you try to copy, if you try to just invent something for the sake of it being interesting, it will not be persuasive either, because if it's not you, then it's just going to be an image that can disappear eventually. But it's not easy to keep the balance, actually. It's really not easy because they are very different. The world of arts and being a musician and creating something is, in my opinion, something very sophisticated, very beautiful, very emotional, spiritual, philosophical, and it's a sphere that is, it's very personal, it's very intimate in a way. On the other side, when you go to the business side, it's music business, but it's business. It's anything like anything else. You can compare it to any other field. So yes, you have to be cold, you have to be cruel sometimes, you have to be, you cannot get involved emotionally too much, again, because everybody knows that statistics from success in anything is out of the 100, if you get 3, 4, 5%, that's a success. So you also have to be ready for things like that to happen or not happen, better said. So it's not easy to keep the balance between being open and investing emotionally on one side, and then again holding back and not getting involved emotionally in other things and not letting them get to you. So it's a difficult thing. It's not easy. It helps if you have someone, if you have an agent, if you have a manager, or a few people that can arrange certain things for you, or if nothing else, somebody that recommends you to someone. But then again, it's also something that you have to work on for a longer period of time to kind of make your circle of friends bigger.
Does this experience influence your piano playing at the end of the day?
Yes, absolutely. All this that I said together, not just the business financial part. I think everything, it's interesting to go back and you compare yourself. It's sometimes interesting when you have the same piece that you played. If I go back to a piece that I played when I was 18 and I played now, you see something else in it. You say something different through it. And it's a very interesting thing to see yourself change, to see yourself develop. I think it's important thing to follow your progress all the time. You cannot just let yourself go and maybe do a checkup every 5 years. Because sometimes not necessarily everything is good that is changing about you. I think that, for example, going back to New York City, it's something that the city is very aggressive and it's very strong, and it can change you in negative ways as well if you are not strong enough or if you don't realize those changes on time. Also, we all have or have had difficult moments in our lives. I think when something bad is happening and when you really hit the bottom, I think that's also a great opportunity for you to grow and mature as an artist as well. And unfortunately, it seems to be the case with any poet, writer, musician, that they all had to suffer and had horribly, horribly tragic lives, but then they made something beautiful out of that. So everything changes you. I think it's changes that are unfortunately negative in your life, they can influence you easier than maybe something that is truly positive, and when everything is going well. So also to monitor kind of for yourself the good events in your life and to really, really appreciate them, that can influence your playing. I think it's also a matter of becoming more mature and growing up. That shows in the playing. I see that in myself, that becoming older, becoming more mature makes me more secure, makes me more calm and maybe more self-confident in the way I do things, everything in my life, and also my playing, that you really know what to do, and that expresses in your playing through a certain freedom that you have. You really have a freedom in playing, and when you open up in playing, then you really can truly start actually to grow as an artist.
I would just like to ask you, how do you embark on a new piece of music that is, for instance, challenging for you? Mm-hmm. Is it from the emotional part? Is it from technical part? Is it just you take notes and that's it? How?
All of that. It's all of that. It's and much more. When I take a new piece, it's usually something that is already more or less familiar to me. And what is important to me is you read through the piece. You, of course, once again, as I mentioned before, the technical part is always important because that's the tool, and you have to work on that as well. And then for me, it has always been that there are certain pieces that I started working on and we didn't connect. There would be a piece that I start playing and it just, I like it. I like it when somebody else performs it, but I don't find a piece of myself in it. Like I said before, you have to pick. And in that case, unless I had to, I would not play it. On the other side, I would go and pick something else that does say something about me, that enables me to express a certain part of my personality, part of my character. So that would be a very important thing for me, that I feel that there's a natural path for me to go into that certain work. If I feel natural about that, if I feel that it's that it doesn't really require too much thinking, analyzing, structuring, how would I do this, how would I do that? If it comes naturally, of course, there's still thinking and analyzing of the piece that you have to do, but not that you make a whole scenario of, okay, this is how it has to happen. So that's the most important part, that I can connect with the work. And then, of course, through the time that you're working on a certain piece, the ideas that you had before, they become more clear, or you maybe want to change certain things. It's a process. It's a process that sometimes even takes a few years, because it's also something that, it's like with acting probably, and an actor that has been on a stage for 50 times with the same play, after those 50 times, he will feel the role differently that he did the very first time that he played it. So the piece matures with you. There's also a process that happens with actually not even working on the certain piece. When musicians always say that you want to leave it. So you came to a certain level and then you want to leave it for a while, that it just sits there. And when it just sits there for a few months, then something happens. Something happens inside of you, that you grew with a piece, that you matured, and then you come back to it, and then it's an interesting process.
Are there moments of crisis also in this process?
I think there are always moments of crisis. There's mini moments of crisis when it's 35 degrees outside and you want to be on the beach, and you are inside with the four walls and the piano. So it's not really a crisis, but as I said before, you just have to know what you want to do. And if you want to do a certain thing, then of course there's a sacrifice you have to make. A moment of crisis in what I do, whether it makes sense for me as a person, no. What I do, whether it makes sense globally, again, what difference can you make with that? I think it requires that you think about it very thoroughly. And I think in any profession that we do, we can maybe make a difference in a certain way. But you have to be smart about that. You have to be realistic about that. And for me personally, I did a lot of things with traveling around the world and working in areas with children that would have never had a possibility to learn about classical music before. So I know that I was able to make a difference in a way with those children and kind of opened up a new world for them. Same thing goes for any civilized country that, not civilized is a very wrong word, developed country, that you can give people opportunity to also learn something about that. Many, many times the audience really does appreciate a couple of words about a work or about the artist, and they really like to get that feedback, not just the passive role of the audience to sit there and be still and not say a word and clap when they're supposed to, but also to make it a little more interactive. So I think all of that, as an artist, you can make a difference. And once again, it makes sense. And if whatever you do in your life, if it makes sense, I think that there's really no reason for a crisis. There's always difficult moments and you have to fight. It would be irrational to think that everything can go smooth, and that would be boring too. So, yeah.
Do you think that's the purpose of music, or would you add something to it?
The purpose of music in what? To fight?
In
to struggle?
No. The purpose of music in the world today, where there's so much things going on, wars, as you said, many negative things, also positive things. What's the role of music in all of that?
I think role of arts in general is balance. I see it mostly as balance, because you have to have something that most of us have, jobs that feed us, literally, because you have to work, you have to eat, you have to live somewhere, you want to have a certain lifestyle, which is the financial side of your life that is important, and you have to work for that. But the spiritual and emotional side is just as important, if not more important, because especially now, for example, you have economic global crisis. You have heard in the past 6 months, 12 months, how many people have committed suicide? And I'm talking about really important people that were CEOs, directors, presidents of important companies on very, very high positions. And I'm not saying that this is the case for every single one of them, but I'm very positive that for many of them, for many people that have only invested in the material their entire life, the material has become the center and the most important groundstone that they have for their existence. So when that particular thing is destroyed, there is nothing left. And I think it's important for any of us to have something that feeds you. Because when you hit a difficult time in your life, you have to have something to hold on to. A good comparison to that is why so many people in difficult times turn to religion, because they need something. They need something that gives them hope. They need something that gives them strength. And I think that throughout our lives, as a continuous thing, I think music and art, it can be that thing that gives you the strength. It doesn't necessarily have to be only God, only religion, for whatever religion it may be. But I think we have to realize which parts of our life we have, and we have to dedicate ourselves to them. And it's also something that requires time. And that's a problem today, that people don't have time for that. They're too tired. So maybe also doing an interview, a talk like this, and you can maybe bring it closer to someone or make it interesting for them to go to a concert. It can help. So that's another role that we can do. We bring it to the people if they don't have time to come to us.
Irena, thank you for joining us here today.
Thank you very much.
I wish you a lot of success in exploring the essence of music and conveying it to your audiences and students. And of course, a safe trip back to New York City.
Thank you.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, let's hear an excerpt of Irena's music. May her mastery inspire you.